Hey, I'm Marcus of CradleCat, and if you're looking to make your electric guitars sound good in Logic Pro, then keep on watching this video, because that's exactly what we're going to walk through. I was asked about making electrics sound good in songs on one of my other videos, and recently I've mostly been using Native Instruments guitar rig effects for my guitars. However, I figured, hey, let's try to recreate some similar tone, some similar sound using just stock plugins. So I'll walk through how that works, what we set up, how we get a bigger overall guitar sound even outside of the effects, and also the preset that I put together. I'll include in a link in the description below, but as usual, keep on watching this so that you know how to use it, or else it's not going to sound as good if you don't know what to change when. So let's dive in here and just hear what we're working with.
Make sure that you twist it, baby. Hey, honey, hands, are you feeling lucky? Got it, boy, the guts and glory. Trying to honey, hands, your cups are bloody. High stakes running.
So that's one of the sounds, and then we also have another guitar sound right over here with a little more of a shimmery effect. So let's go ahead and hear that.
Who pulls the strings? Oh, got fancy things. That's what you want, yeah.
So two different types of guitar sounds that we're working with here. Let's go over the first one that I showed, which is that kind of thicker guitar chorus sound, that fuzzy crunch. The first thing to point out is not even the plugins or the preset or anything like that. It is just how it was recorded and how many times it was recorded. So first of all, I'm recording all of these direct in, just meaning I have my guitar cabled directly into my audio interface. So I'm not miking an amp. If you're miking an amp and trying to make that sound good, that's a whole other topic. We'll be going over the direct input here. All the effects and everything will not be on your pedal board. It could be, but in this case, we're just doing a raw guitar sound right into the Logic Pro effects. So the first thing that we do is, you'll notice I have it doubled. So it's just left and right panned. One is far left, one is far right. And that's going to add a nice little chorusy effect as they're a little bit just played a little differently. You know, again, when I'm doubling, it's not copying and pasting, it's playing it twice and then having those on separate tracks. The other thing that we do is in this little B part here, not only are we doubling it, but we're also doing a different voicing or a different, playing a different spot on the guitar neck to thicken up the chord even more. So here, got a lower one. And then we're layering in that punchier high one. And again, I didn't do a ton of, if any, timing correction on these. I didn't do any timing correction on these actually, because leaving them a little bit different like that with that much distortion is what kind of adds to some of that chorusy effect. So, depending on what effects you're using, I would go back in and correct some of this, but for how it sounds here, I actually like the way that it's kind of chorusing as it has the difference between the left and right sides. So I'm just pointing out the timing difference right there. So that's the overall arrangement side of it. Diving into the actual effects now, let's take a look at what we have here. So we have a noise gate first. So this is just cleaning up any of the noise floor that you're recording directly in. Otherwise, that noise floor is going to have all the effects, all the distortion, all the pedals on it. So just like if you were playing guitar live and have a high noise floor from either bad power supplies, that kind of thing on your pedal board, going into distortion, going into your amp, that is going to be hard to clean out unless you clean it up first. So having that noise gate at the very beginning here is what we're doing, cleaning up some of that silence. So let's just hear that on and off here, just with the one track first. So here we have noise gate off, and then noise gate on. So it helps it get that choppy wherever I'm actually palm muting or stop it playing, it cuts off the sound and gets rid of that noise floor that's going through the effects. Next up, we just have another sort of cleanup effect. Really, the first two are just sort of housekeeping effects, if you will. It's cutting out any of the super low end. In this case, I didn't want that because I have such a big bass on the synth bass playing behind it that I really didn't want any of the low end from the guitar butting up against that and muddying up the really low end. So again, sometimes that might sound good to have that bleed through, but not in this case. So I'm cutting out that low end here. Depending on your mix, you may open that up a little bit. You may want some of that, but in my case, I'm cutting that out. The next one is where we get to really the built-in guitar effects in Logic. So it's the pedal board. You can use the pedal board here from the amps and pedals as an overall kind of rack setup here, or a pedal board setup. And you can also use the individual pedals by going to these stomp boxes and finding the same things here. So if you just wanted to use one, or maybe as you're building out your sound, maybe you want to use a pedal after the amp, you could put that individual pedal here using the stomp boxes plugins instead of that overall pedal board. In my case, I'm just putting them all on the pedal board and then going into the amp. So here, let's go ahead and turn all of these off first so we can hear what each one is doing. First, let's listen in with just the compression on and off. So just evening out the tone a little bit, and then adding the chorus. I'll go ahead and turn this up a little bit so we can hear that better. And then adding the grit after the chorus. And then a delay after that. Just a really subtle delay. I'll increase that so you can. So really more than anything, that delay is doing a little bit of, just a really short delay and also cutting down the high and low end of that delay. So it's just a little slap delay basically at the end of the chain here. So again, with all of those on and off, I'll just do that here as well. So in addition to stomping them individually, I can just turn on and off the plugin overall like you normally would. So let's hear that. So that's where our pedal board ends. Let's hear it with the amp now. So after the pedal board, it's going into our amp emulator. Let's go ahead and hear that off and then on. So it's really evening out the overall sound and kind of giving it a little more of a not quite as present fuzz compared to just directly from the pedal board. So again, pretty piercing, and that's a pretty cool sound on its own, depending on what you're going for. The same in the preset that you'll have, just turning off that amp, get to a really cool sound, as you can see, just without running it through here. Because I was going for a certain sound, I also went through this amp to kind of to get more at that fuzzed out sound that I wanted for this song. As you can see, I'm using a little more bass than the mids, bumping up the treble a little bit, and a lot of the presence there as well on the amp. After that amp, we have a compressor. So these last two plugins, I kind of think of it as the first two were sort of housekeeping plugins. The second two are your actual guitar effects and sound design effects. And then the last two are sort of my mixing effects. So this song's into the mixing stage. And as part of that process, I wanted to even out the tone, or even out the levels and tone a little bit overall. So adding a compressor there. And then lastly, adding some EQ to shape it and get it to meld better with the rest of the soundscape. So first, looking at the compressor here, let's see what that's doing. So we'll hear it on and off. So just a pretty loose attack time there. So it's still got some punch, but it's evening out the rest of that of each of those guitar hits. So not taking too much away from that first punch of a guitar, but evening out the rest of whatever I'm playing after that. The rest of the settings here, you can see it's doing about -5 dB gain reduction. And again, leaving room for punch, but then compressing a lot of the rest of each of those strums or each of those plucks. After that compressor, we're ending it with an EQ on that plug-in chain. And this is, again, specific to the song I'm working on. I'm cutting out a lot of the low ends because of that thicker bass that I'm using, the synth bass. So just to kind of hear it on and off without it. And then the high end for this particular guitar on the chorus, I'm kind of cutting it down as well, leaving room for some of the vocals and other higher end synths. So let's go ahead and hear that. And a lot of that high end is actually already cut off by the amp and by the effects pedals. That little slap delay piece is cutting down some. And the low end is really where I hear more of the difference here. You can hear it again. Just kind of cleaning that up, leaving a lot of room for the bass to really just own that whole bottom area. The other guitars, so let's take a look at the voicing that we used, the higher one. So you can see it's done a little differently. I'm instead just boosting that high end because I want that to be one of the some of those strings in this voicing to punch through a little higher, add a little bit of that shimmer on top, and we're cutting down a lot of the low end here. And this really wouldn't work on its own if I just had one guitar part playing during the chorus. I would probably do some combination of both of these EQs, but because I'm using two different guitars for that one part, I'm treating them differently as individual pieces than I would if it were just one piece. So this guitar kind of handles that high end. The other one, as you can see, is kind of handling that fuzzier, almost purposefully muddy end, some of that 200 to 400 range there being boosted a little bit. And together, they make that complete sound that I'm going for. So, one on its own, and then together. So if I didn't have this on the, let's just kind of take off the EQ, the low end EQ on the higher voicing. If I didn't have that, it starts to be too much in that low end and then those mid lows. So by letting each of those parts do its own thing, the cohesive sound of both of those guitars together sounds better than it would have otherwise. So again, that covers the chorus sounds. Let's take a look at that second style that I previewed earlier. So this one right here. So again, this was trying to match a sound that I had already created with third-party effects. And the way that I did this was I used the non-pedalboard effect before I hit the pedalboard. So this is just a pitch shift, and I'm pitching it up an octave and then blending it in here. So without this, still kind of shimmery, but adding that pitch shifter adds a little bit of that high end, some of that high end shimmer that I was getting out of one of the third-party effects pedals. And it sounds very similar and it sounds cool. So we've got that taken care of with a, not from my pedalboard plugin, but another plugin in Logic's stock suite. So if there's a certain sound you're going for, don't limit yourself to what's on the pedalboard or what's in the amps. You can use any of those other effects, play around with them, any of the chorus or vibrato or tremolo effects, lots of other cool effects that aren't just in that little specialized amps and pedals section. So go ahead and check all the other areas as you're building out your sound. After that, the pedalboard effect is starting pretty similarly. We have the compressor at the beginning, and then we have more focus on delays and choruses with just a little fuzz at the end there. So on this one, let's go ahead and stomp all those on and off just to hear what's happening here. So again, we have our compressor just evening out some of the levels. A little delay, adding a little bit of that bounce. Chorus kind of adding some of that modulation and just chorusy pedal effect that you would expect. And then blue echo. Again, just a little echo pedal there, adding to that overall atmosphere. And then this adds a little bit of punch and fuzz to all of it. And I've played around with the order of these pedals. You know, you're welcome to move these around into different orders to get the different effects that you want. So for example, if I moved that distortion at the beginning, it's going to get a slightly different sound because you know, that chorus is happening afterwards. It's chorusing all of that fuzz versus now all the chorus is being fuzzed over because the fuzz is in the last part of the pedal chain here. So drag these around to get the effect for your sound. This is what I came up with that fit in here, really focusing on driving that fuzz, driving that shimmer in this particular track, with the chorus ones really getting thick fuzz sounds for the guitars there. And after those effects, just like before, we have sort of our mixing plugins. We have a compressor just doing a little bit of work. I wanted this one to be less compressed than the chorus ones were. You know, I didn't need it as thick sounding. I wanted it to be a little bouncier for this particular simple little riff that's happening during the pre-chorus. And then after that, again, we have an EQ similar to the other parts that we looked at earlier, cutting out the lows, cutting out some of the highs, leaving room for vocals and other little shimmery synths that we have going throughout the rest of the song. So both of those effects will have the presets down in the description as a link, the shimmery effect, and then the fuzzier, crunchier, thicker guitar that we use in the chorus. So feel free to grab those and feel free to also play around with the different pedals, move them around on the pedal board, try different effects, or especially change some of the EQ to best fit your sound, best fit your mix for your song. If you like this video and want more free stock plugins, stock presets for Logic, go ahead and watch this next video for a full project template and download. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and let me know by subscribing, liking this video, and letting me know down in the comments. I've been trying to make these tutorials or behind the scenes whenever I get questions or I have questions that I've run across in my music production journey, so hopefully you find them helpful as well. Thanks, I'll see you next time.